Most landlords think that the Renters Reform Bill takes the power away from them, but it doesn't. If you misunderstand where that control has gone, it will cost you, but not in the way that you think. Welcome back to the Property Legacy Podcast. We are back for season 5, and I feel like it's been a while since we've been filming. But loads of exciting things have been happening behind the scenes in business, as always, and we cannot believe we're back with our 5th season.
It's been over 2 years since we started, and we've come a long way. We've learned a hell of a lot, not just about property, but about how to do a podcast. That was the first thing we had to learn. But going forwards, we've got a new year, lots of new regulations coming in, lots of changes for the property market, and a few things along the way that I think will surprise you.
So today we are going to be talking all about the hot topic, I think, with all landlords at the moment, and that is the Renters Reform Bill that is coming in on the 1st of May. Today's episode, we are going to be diving in what it looks like for you as a landlord and the things that you need to know going forward. The most important thing is being educated, being aware, and also knowing what your rights are. And we are here to explain all of that in today's episode. So, as somebody who isn't a landlord, can you explain to me, to kick things off, what is this Renters Reform Bill?
Well, it's basically the government finally coming up with a lot more rules and regulations that protect tenants and landlords the same, but also change the way we've been working for years. There's not been such a great deal of change in a couple of decades, and it's basically got people worried. And media's telling everybody that it's doom and gloom and it's not going to be worth being a landlord anymore, so everybody's frightened to death and panicking.
Okay, and today we're going to specifically talk about this from a landlord's point of view, what things are changing, all of those types of things. And I think one of the biggest things that people are scared about and that is changing is Section 21.
Yeah, Section 21 is going from May the 1st, but it's not really the biggest change. It's not really, it's going to affect landlords that much. At the moment, if you don't know what Section 21 means, it is a way of going through an eviction where there's no fault. So if a landlord decides before May the 1st that he wants to get rid of his tenants to then get the tenants in that would pay more, then he could do that, or they could do that. After May the 1st, that's out the window. So a lot of landlords are concerned that they will lose control. They won't be able to evict if there's a problem, but that's totally untrue. So Section 21 leaves, but what that means is at this moment in time, before May the 1st, if somebody is evicted under a no-fault eviction, even if they were at fault, you don't know why they've been evicted. So if you're a landlord and you're trying to rent your new property and somebody comes to you and says they've been evicted through Section 21, you don't know if they were a good tenant or a bad tenant.
Okay.
Going forwards, if somebody comes to you that's been evicted, then there are clear reasons for that eviction. They either haven't paid the rent, they damaged the property, antisocial behaviour, or the landlord wanted to move a member of his own family into it, or they've evicted so they can sell the property.
Okay.
So it's very clear from that point that if you're looking to do background checks on a tenant and they've recently been evicted after the 1st of May, then that in effect would be alarm bells to tell you there's a problem here and more investigation needs to be required.
Okay. And I think as well, in terms of information, it's actually going to give more information than they've ever been able to have before. Is that right?
It's going to give more information at the moment because you could be evicted with no fault. You could argue they weren't at fault, it was all the landlord, and it's very messy to try and sort that out. But if it's been to court and it's been through the court system and there was a definite reason for it, if it was a Section 8, then as a landlord or a letting agent, then you would be very concerned about taking that tenant out. So going forwards now, the actual risk isn't about getting rid of people at the end of a tenancy, it's about getting the right tenants in the first place. So now it's really important to do your background checks, really important to make sure they can afford it, really important that you rent it to a tenant that if all went wrong, say we had another COVID and they lost their job, that they would then qualify for that size of property and get benefits.
Okay.
Because if you a 3-bedroom house to a single person and they lost the job, they might be able to afford it, and that's fine. But if they lose the job and couldn't afford it, they wouldn't get enough to rent it.
Right, okay.
So that in itself will protect you from any further problems. If it's a family that qualifies for the 3-bedroom house, then you will get the LHA rate for that property, which generally is roughly about 2/3 of the market value. So at least you're securing 2/3 payments.
Okay. And so, in terms of the new system, how does it work then with courts and stuff going forward and the legal side of things?
Well, this is the problem. As usual, the government has put this bill together, put everything in place, but hasn't given us tenancy agreements, hasn't improved how the courts work. So there will be scenarios where the courts take longer to get through this while they get used to the new law, while they get used to the new bill. In theory, it should work, but we all know that in practice, things change is painful.
And as a landlord, what would you say are the next steps that you need to take for this if you've not kind of done any research into this area, if you're not quite sure where to start? What would you say is the best advice? Like, what is that starting point, and what would you say, especially within a few weeks of this being in place, what should landlords make sure that they are doing for due diligence and all that kind of stuff?
So first thing, that all landlords that have already got tenants at this moment in time, they've got until the end of May to issue their tenants with a copy of the government's tenancy pack. Explains to tenants exactly what's going on. They have to advise their tenants of what the changes to rules and that type of thing. So there is a document on gov.uk that you can download, send it to your tenant, and that has to be done by the end of May 2026. The issues around that, personally, I would always make sure that every landlord does it themselves, not to rely on their agent, just because for every one missed, it's £7,000 fine. So you want to make sure you do this correctly. Next, I would send it online through a DocuSign or a signable system so that you get them to sign and you've got proof. After that, I would send a printed copy to each person so that you can have proof of postage. And even if you have people with difficulties, whether they're dyslexic or any issues in understanding English, then I would make sure that we would go to every length to actually sit down with the tenant and explain to them what's going on. If you need more information, it's all on gov.uk. There are other areas like National Landlords Association, letting agencies, YouTube. There's a lot of information going on out there, but it's make sure that you know what you're doing, and make sure that first of all, you make sure that that document is sent to every single tenant you have.
And how can, obviously, it's not good enough just sending it out. Like, you need to make checks, you need to be making contact within. When the information is sent, our landlord's sending it in a way that they need to confirm that the tenant has that information.
So by using systems like DocuSign or Signable, you can add a page that they can sign electronically to say that they've received it, read it, and understood it. And then that is your tenant has said that they understand what the changes are, and that if anything ever went wrong, then you can discuss that if it was needed in court. It's all about gathering your evidence together. So I wouldn't just allow your agent to do it. I wouldn't just post it through somebody's door. I'd always make sure that you get a sheet of paper that they've signed to say they've read and understood the information.
Obviously, whenever things change, especially when systems have been in place for so many years, the first port of call is panicking.
Yes.
And I think that's quite a normal way for people to respond. With panicking, it leads to avoidance, which leads to things not being done. And as we've said, it's a £7,000 fine per property. This isn't something that can be ignored. And the most important thing is having all of the information, so it's as simple as a process as possible. So if anybody is feeling panicked and feeling overwhelmed, what's the best kind of advice that we can give?
Yeah, so don't panic. There's a lot of people panicking for the last 9-10 months, ever since they set a date for releasing the bill. The media has been adding to the panic by telling everybody that owning properties to rent out will be pointless. We lose loads of money, and there's been a lot of landlords selling, which has added to reducing the value of properties, especially in London. They've been dropping like stones. In the rest of the country, we're still recovering from a recession, so prices are low at the moment. The good thing is lots of properties to buy, so now's the time to invest. Going forwards, though, is do not panic. All your tenancies that you have in place don't change. They automatically become rolling tenancies from May the 1st. So if you have a 12-month tenancy right now or a 6-month tenancy right now, it won't matter after May the 1st. They all just change over. You don't need to go and change all your tenancies to the new style tenancy. First of all, we don't have a new style tenancy yet, so that's government just not getting everything in line before it starts. Going forwards, the other things will change, but over time. The scenario where landlords have to sign up to a PRS system, they have to sign up to a database. Those systems haven't been put in place yet, and we're looking at those by the end of 2026. So it's not going to be an issue for May at all.
So in terms of how it can look the best for you, we would always recommend having systems and procedures in place. And what does that look like in practice?
So all the time we've been talking about properties, we've always been talking about setting up your limited companies to own properties, because going forwards, being a landlord, investing in property is actually a business. And like all businesses, they either sink or swim depending on their systems in place. You need to make it as streamlined as possible so that if you are looking for a tenant, you have a system that you just follow, you pull the file out and you follow it step by step. And it makes sure that you go and get tenancy background checks. You make sure you get your IDs checked. And you make sure that you don't differentiate between people. You cannot, going forward, you cannot say you don't allow children. You cannot say you don't allow benefits, and you cannot say you don't allow pets. But going forwards, it means you need to have these systems in place with strict criteria as to what you will accept and what you won't accept, and make sure that sits with the new laws and regulations.
So the biggest piece of advice going forward, especially when it comes to choosing new tenants, is to think about, would you choose that tenant if there was a scenario that arose where you couldn't remove them easily? So it's about doing more checks. It's about feeling more confident when you are making those decisions. I think there's a massive stress from landlords when you're trying to get a property tenanted, that sometimes the first person that comes along, there's that excitement, but also it can cause so many problems if they are not the right tenant for you. So you are allowed to do the background checks, you are allowed to keep that on for different people, and most importantly, it's got to feel right for you as a landlord who you are deciding to come and live in your property, because with things changing, it is not as simple to evict if there are issues. So it's just that reminder of you to go with your gut, understand the relationship that you're having with the tenant, the interaction and the communications that you're having with that potential tenant. Does that feel good for you as a landlord? Do they feel like a suitable person or family for that home? And going forward, I think that knowing is really, really important with any kind of decisions that you're making with anyone that's coming into your property.
And at the end of the day, I wouldn't give all these choices and decisions to agents or to other people unless they have strict criteria to stick to. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't really affect anybody else except the person who owns the properties or the company that owns the properties. And you want to be profitable, and you want to be able to hand this on to the next generations for generations to come. So you don't want to put yourself in a position where you could then be up in court for the wrong reasons. So if you need advice, then we've got the podcast. We've also got our Q&A website. You can get all this from our main website, which is the propertylegacypodcast.co.uk. We will put a link down below, but if you comment, we will help you get that clarity before you make your next step.
And if you're a landlord and want to pass information on to tenants, the episode after this one will explain all of this from a tenant's point of view too. So make sure to pass that information on if you find it valuable. And again, if you have any questions or anything for us, then please feel free to pop them in the comments below.
Thanks for joining us. You can get in touch with us on our website, which is propertylegacypodcast.co.uk. You can look for us on all our socials, on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and obviously YouTube.
If you'd like to be a guest on our podcast, we are now looking for people who want to come on Zoom as podcast guests. So no matter where you're based, we want to have a conversation with you. So make sure to get in touch with us, and we cannot wait to welcome you and to let you share your property legacy with us too.
So that's it for now. We'll see you on the next episode that's coming out soon.